Om Namah Shivaya. So we're going to continue with the topic of the divine virtues, or the Daivi Sampat, which the Divine Mother Lakshmi represents. And this is taken from the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So we mentioned that the Navaratri celebration is actually a teaching. Worship means, in the yogic teachings, worship doesn't merely mean that you are doing something external. There is something external, but worship is about recognition. It's learning to recognize the divine from more constricted ways to more and more expansive ways, which are the reality, because the teaching of the yogis is that in reality all is God, but all means uncompromising all, everything. And worship is there to bring us to that recognition of what God really is. And our inability to see things as divine is only because of our own ignorance and what we call attractions and aversions, our own emotional attachments concerning things. So this is what makes us unable to recognize the divine within and without. So then cultivating divine virtues is the means to knowledge. As we saw yesterday, Lord Krishna lists a list of virtues and he calls them knowledge. And this is not ordinary, because knowledge usually is referred to as knowledge of the self. Virtues are mental qualities. But Swami Sivananda says these virtues are called knowledge because they are the means to knowledge. This is why. And if we see someone that has developed all these virtues, it's an indication of their knowledge of the self. This is the idea. Otherwise, there is no way that the mind can adhere to virtue in such a way. So then, how do we cultivate virtues? The yogis explain. You see, all forces are divine forces. This we need to, as we have been seeing. And the teaching of the Devi Mahatmya is exactly about that. All forces are divine forces. So what is the problem? The problem is always ignorance. Meaning, when forces are acting in our subconscious mind and we don't understand them, they are acting as instinctive forces, which are not understood to us. They become binding forces. Okay, so because we don't know what they are, they become binding forces in our life. They cause us to become impulsive. So the problem with what we call the vasanas, the subconscious forces, is that they are not understood by us. We don't know what they are. You know, it's like you have sharks swimming in the ocean. You don't know exactly what's going on in the subconscious mind. There is something there. It's like volcanic soil. You know, it erupts every now and then. And this is what the lower forces of the mind are. Actually, they are divine forces. They are just not recognized. They are acting on the subconscious, unknown level. That's all. And the way to tame those forces is by knowledge. And there are two steps to it. The first one is that we should begin to understand those subconscious forces, instinctive forces, the forces of attractions and aversions, in light of what we call dharma and adharma, which means, first of all, we need to put those forces in the frame of right and wrong. We should know what we should act upon and what we should not act upon. Even though those forces are in the mind, they are operating in the mind, we have to know this is dharma, this is right, this is adharma, it's not right, you should not do it. This is the idea. So the first step is to shine the light of dharma on what's going on in the mind. This is the way we begin to understand those forces. It's not complete knowledge, but it's the beginning. The dharma will begin to show us what these forces are. Ultimately, when we cultivate knowledge of the self, we will know those forces as they truly are. Only then they will not be binding, you see. Even when we learn dharma and adharma, the bondage of those forces is not completely gone. Because although you know you shouldn't act upon them, they are still there. So they exercise some level of bondage on you. But when we attain knowledge, their bondage is completely removed, because they are known to be not different from the self, or not different from God. Only then their binding nature is gone. This is the idea. But for this, we first of all need to purify the mind through dharma, through right action. So therefore, there are stages of how we handle what we call the subconscious instinctive forces and gradually develop divine virtues. And this is exactly what we are learning in the Navaratri, in Durga, Lakshmi, and Saraswati. So Durga is the struggle of purification. Lakshmi is the embodiment of dharma, of purity, and ultimately the mind becomes a divine mind. And Saraswati is the knowledge. So it's the same divine mother in different stages. This is the idea. So the aspirant needs to do the work. What is the work? The work is to strive to gradually understand the forces of the subconscious mind. So this is why yogis have what is called self-analysis. Self-analysis is the primary way of how a yogi cultivates divine virtues. Self-analysis means that we need to analyze our thoughts, speech, and actions during the day, and like this we gradually begin to understand what is what. Because otherwise it's not really possible. The egotistic forces are very powerful, and not only that they are very powerful, the egotistic forces are coated with a very powerful coating, which is called self-justification, which means the mind will tend to justify its own ways. This is the idea. And that's something that as spiritual aspirants we will have to get through. Otherwise there is no spiritual progress. See, as long as the mind says what I do is right, we are at a standstill. There will not be any progress. So as spiritual aspirants, we have to go through this self-justification quality of the ego and see things for what they are. And this is called self-analysis. So, you know, a simple example. Let's say there is an argument with someone, right? That's natural, right? People go into arguments. In the argument, the mind will always say, I'm right. You see? Because the ego is not really interested in truth. The ego is interested in being right. See? So this is self-justification. So the point is that after the argument is done and both parties prove themselves to be right, beyond any doubt, at night before we go to sleep, we have to open our self-analysis notebook and look at it with the eyes of truth, not with the eyes of being right. That's totally different. This is self-analysis. So in self-analysis, we want spiritual benefit, not egotistic benefit. Okay? So being right will not help anyone. This is the idea. Not in the egotistic sense. See? So in self-analysis, we begin to look at our own mistakes and ask ourselves, why did I say what I said? Why am I thinking the way I'm thinking? Why am I doing what I'm doing? It's contrary to divine virtues. Why am I doing this? We need to ask those questions to gradually begin to understand the instinctive forces of the subconscious mind. When we make them conscious, we make our own freedom more apparent. Then after we begin to understand those forces correctly, we can apply the right remedies. But when we don't understand them correctly, we can never apply the right remedies because we don't know what we are dealing with. Okay, so, and that's a long process. You see, to understand the subconscious forces needs systematic sadhana. It needs meditation, it needs karma yoga, it needs bhakti yoga, it needs the whole yogic practices to be able to really do this work of turning the subconscious into something which is known, without which we cannot become free. So this is the practice of virtues, which is very fundamental for the yogic practices. So now, yesterday we saw the list and we saw humility. Swami Sivananda says humility is he says that humility is negation of vanity. It is the absence of self-esteem or self-praise. So we explained that as humans, on the psychological level, we value very much self-esteem, and rightfully speaking, because as long as we don't have a positive mind, we are imprisoned by the mind. So self-esteem is a positive thing, but only to a certain extent. After our mind is positive enough that we are not imprisoned by it, we should get out of this self-esteem thing, because this is a mental understanding of the self, and that's exactly where the bondage is. You see? So as long as self-esteem is there, superiority and inferiority will always be there, and we will still be imprisoned by the mind. We need to know the self, which is not the mind. Therefore, this is the role of humility. Humility is truth. That's really what it is. Then he says the basis of pride is the consciousness of possessing something, wealth, knowledge, strength, beauty, and virtuous qualities in a larger measure than others. So what is the basis of pride? Which, you see, what is the problem of pride? The problem of pride is that we get entangled in the mind. That's the problem. You see? We get entangled in false identifications. And that's exactly the source of suffering. So how do we become proud? We have something which we imagine is more than what others have. Then we become proud. So some gender, it can be knowledge, it can be status, power, beauty, something that we have and we imagine is more than what others have. And then pride begins to afflict the mind. This is the idea. A proud man possesses at least something, but a man of vanity possesses nothing, and yet he thinks he is superior to others. So Sivananda makes the distinction between vanity and pride. He says a proud person has a reason to be proud. Of course, pride is an ill quality, but still, a proud person still has something to be proud of. Whereas a vain person doesn't have anything, and yet they are proud. He said this is the distinction. Then he says, a humble man dislikes respect, honor, and praise. He shuns fame and distinction. He never shows his knowledge, ability, prowess, etc. He never praises himself. Why? Because such a person understands that spiritually it's like shooting yourself in the head. You see? Because if you do those things, you are awakening dangerous forces in your mind. You see, a worldly mind loves praise and this type of things because it's not sensitive enough to the danger of egoism. It is unable to perceive it. It's too gross. Whereas a more spiritualized mind, a more refined mind, is able to understand the working of egoism, and it knows that it's a dangerous force to awaken. And therefore, such people don't like this type of things. This is the point. Then absence of hypocrisy. So hypocrisy, Sivananda says, is the desire to appear what one is not. Okay, so especially Swami Sivananda and Swami Vishnudevananda, they strongly condemned what is called religious hypocrisy or spiritual hypocrisy, which means that we try to appear religiously what we are not. So, and this is the point. The point is like this. In the initial stages of the path, when we don't have our own experience of what the spiritual path is, then the ego will understand things very externally. So naturally, the ego will think it's about the clothes I'm wearing, it's about my beard, it's about my hair, it's about my glasses, it's about whatever it is. It will understand spirituality in an external way. That's called hypocrisy. Okay? So hypocrisy is a natural phase in spiritual evolution when there is a lack of experience. And the mind tries to embody the sense of being spiritual in an external way because of lack of experience. This is the idea. Okay, so then we get all sorts of externalized forms of spirituality, like having yoga clubs, and I love yoga because I have a t-shirt that says I love yoga. But actually, you don't know that the I love yoga green shirts are different from the I love yoga yellow shirts. You see? You are ignorant. You don't know that these are two clubs, and they are in competition with each other, and this type of things. So all these type of things have to do with what is called hypocrisy. Hypocrisy, again, is a natural quality of the ego due to lack of understanding. That's all. Lack of taste, lack of experience. You see? So it's like that we look at the menu of some food and we don't eat it, we just read the menu. So at that phase of the practice, hypocrisy will definitely be there. That's the idea. Because it's only external. That's the point. That's